I'm thrilled to have here to chronicle the life and times of the great Don Shula, a man who's known Don for a very long time, knew him for ever and a day, and is as expert on South Florida sports as anybody that I know. And thrilled to be back here on the Rich Eisen Show, a man who normally would be here on this Monday talking about all the Derby winners that he got for all of our friends and listeners on the program, the great Hank Goldberg. How are you, Hank?
Rich,
I know.
This is a tough day for those of us who were close to Coach Shula. You talk about horse racing. In his later years, once a month, he and I and Bob Greasy, a couple other fellows, will go to Gulfstream for lunch, and I did the handicapping, of course, and he was as demanding on me as he was on his players because he didn't like favorites. He said, "I don't want any chalk today." Now, he liked to win, but he didn't want it to be easy.
Well, I mean, and plus he's used to, as a head coach, winning 67% of the time. I don't know if that happens in horse racing either, Hank.
No, he doesn't understand that.
No,
he didn't.
So when somebody, certainly of a certain age right here, who may not remember the great Dolphins years or associate the Dolphins with perennial winning every year, year in and year out, who was Don Shula? What would you tell that person of that generation who Don Shula was, Hank?
Well, he was a very demanding coach, but his players still, loved him. And he was, he said something to me once. We were talking about a coach who had a tough year and had let go of his staff. And he said that was something he would never do because the buck always stopped with him. He knew everything that was going on with that team. I mean, everything that happened in that locker room, he was on top of. And he knew every detail, and he left nothing that was not attended to. And that was him. And he just was always prepared, and he always did things the right way. And there was never any scandal with him. Nobody ever suspected him of anything that wasn't on the up and up. He was just a great, great guy at what he did.
And what it was?
And he was. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go for it, Hank. Please.
I was going to say he was so respected in the community that when Miami was having problems with riots and the reputation was besmirched, and they formed a committee, and they were looking for somebody to be the chairman of the committee who the world respected. And they turned to Shula, and he became the honorary chairman of their trying to get their image restored. That's what they thought of him.
Well, I mean, obviously, I guess the 17-0 season would be the pinnacle for him, and just the brotherhood, the fraternity that seemed to spark for decades, that everyone would still get together. That is just something for me that was always just remarkable to see, certainly in this day and age where I guess people can grow apart. And I'm wondering how much Shula had to do with all of that, Hank.
Well, that was something that some of the players who lived close to each other used to get together and celebrate. But, they had reunions. I went to one just a few years ago, and, he was always there. They had a person who was in charge of, Nat Moore was in charge of the alumni, and they made sure that everybody was in touch, that they would all come in and meet periodically every few years to celebrate their accomplishment. And it was a wonderful event to attend, and Coach Shula always spoke. And, of course, the guy who always brought the house down with stories was Larry Zonka, who was really Shula's favorite. But those lunches that we had in later years, his memory was sharp. He could remember things that were just amazing. His days with the Colts. I asked him once about Unitas, and he said, well, the best athlete on that team was Lenny Moore. He was probably the best athlete I ever coached. It was kind of an astounding thing. for him to say when you think about all the great athletes he coached. Although he acknowledged that Warfield was probably the best guy he coached athletic-wise with the Dolphins. But, and he would tell stories about Otto Graham in Cleveland. And he was just, he and Greasy would get into it a little bit because he remembers every play that Greasy called. And Greasy did call his own plays. Although, Shula dictated what they were going to be.
Hank, you there? Did I lose you, Hank?
Yeah.
Okay, Hank Goldberg here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so hook and ladder. I mean, stuff like that. Fake spike. Are these all things that Shula would be, the idea man for, or he would be people that he delegated to because that's what he did? I just would love to get, before I let you go, some of the nuts and bolts and some of the best memories for some of the most memorable plays in the history of the NFL.
Well, hook and ladder was his play. The Marino play was Marino. But he was he had people who coached against him said that he was a difficult guy to coach against because he took every game separately, and he was adaptable. I thought one of the more amazing things about him was, he threw the ball only 7 times in one of the Super Bowls with Greasy. Not that there was anything wrong with Greasy, who had Warfield, Howard Twilley, Jim Mandis, had some good receivers. But then Marino came along, and he changed his whole philosophy, and he really was the forerunner of today's offenses when he had Marino and Duper and Clayton and Matt Moore and some of those tight ends and Crash Jensen out of the backfield. Those were all things that he developed along with his assistant Gary Stevens. But it was all Shula who saw what he had with Marino and changed his entire coaching philosophy. And if you look at what they do today, they look at films of what Marino did, and that's what they used.
So before I let you go, Hank, how do you think Don Shula would want to be remembered?
I think he would want to be remembered as a coach who did everything the right way. And, the fact that his players responded to him. But I think he really appreciated the fact that he could, not just that he could win, but the way he won. That was important to him.
Hank, I appreciate the time. Everything else okay in your world? Family good? Everything else good?
Yeah, I'm still working at it, doing some handicapping for ESPN, and I was
I saw it.
On all day Saturday.
I saw it.
I would have given you a nice $89 exacta and the handicap you guys had called.
Yeah.
I love it how you said Shula didn't want any favorites. He wanted no chalk, huh? He wanted to hit the big one. He wanted to hit the big one.
Yeah, he used to get on me about that, and he used to, when we'd get to the track, we'd sit down for lunch, and he said, "Chalk, chalk, chalk." And at his birthday celebration a couple of years ago, right before I moved out here, I said, "Hey, you're 88. What do you want? What would you want for your birthday?" He said, "I'd like to become 89."
Well, he did. He got to become 90, which is really, boy, that one just hit me in the gut there, Hank, for you to say that story like that.
As far as what happened to him, this was not virus related. He had some back problems. He was sore the last couple of days, and he was sleeping a lot. And apparently, he just died in his sleep. It may have been the beginning stages of a pneumonia, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, he went.
One other thing.
Sure.
Last summer, he organized a trip with his wife for 24 people to go to on Norman Bremen's yacht and sail around Europe. And right till the end, he loved to travel, and he loved being around his friends. And and that was important to him too. He was a very loyal man.
And he was able to enjoy that summer, and as you said, get to see 90, and then pass away in his sleep in a peaceful manner.
Yeah, one other thing. I talked to him about a month ago, and I'm getting treatment for for kidney disease, which is going very well, by the way.
Great to hear.
But he always asked me first, "How are you doing?" All the issues that he had physically, he always cared about me. And when I got fired from my job at the radio station when I was broadcasting their games because I had a beef with a programming director, can you imagine that? And I went to tell him right away, and he knew about it. And he called me into his office and opened up a couple of cans of beers. We spent an hour together. When I walked out of there, I felt great about myself. And I knew then, the way he could handle people. And my first assignment for ESPN was to cover them at the Meadowlands when they were facing the Jets. He got off the team bus, saw me with the mic flag, and he came over. He said, smile on his face, "I told you you'd do well."
Hank, love you, man. Thank you for taking the time and helping us remember your friend, and my condolences, and same from Susie to you, too.
Thanks, Rich. All my best to Susie.
I will send it. Thank you. Thanks for the call. That's Hank Goldberg. Sailed around the world. That's the way you want to do it. Oh, God, I'm just getting old.
Yeah, what a way to go.
Sail around the world with your wife and friends. Passing his sleep. Rest in peace, Don Shula. Rest in peace to the all-time winningest head coach in the National Football League. But as you hear from so many of those who knew him and pay tribute to him, a great human being and a winner of life. Don Shula passing away at the age of 90. We say rest in peace to the all-time great.